Today I'm going to be sharing with you some snacks I like to keep on hand, especially for those really busy days. We are home a large percentage of the time, and even though we try to have a regular schedule for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there are times when someone gets hungry and can't hold out until the next full meal is served. So having these snacks on hand really helps to fill those bellies in the in-between moments. I'm also going to be sharing with you what we're having for dinner on this day. So I'm starting by milling some flour, and big life update, we have finally gone through all of our store-bought flour, and so I am using 100% whole wheat flour from wheat berries that I am milling myself at home. For those of you who've been listening for quite some time, you know that I've been experimenting with using wheat berries, but I've also been doing a half all-purpose flour, half wheat berry recipes for the last 6 months or so, and I feel comfortably enough working with the wheat berries now where I feel like I can really dive in to this full force. And so all of the all-purpose flour from the store has been used up, and so now I'm doing 100% whole wheat flour from the wheat berries that I am milling on my own. Now I have an entry-level mill and it works beautifully. In less than 2 minutes I can have powdery flour in whatever combination I would like. I really like milling my own flour because I can put different wheat berries together, increasing the nutritional value that's going into the foods that I'm preparing. And you'll see after a very short period of time, I have very fine, fluffy flour. Now, I like to mill my berries twice. So the first time around, I'll mill it for about a minute, and then I will open up my hopper and I will fluff the flour. And sometimes there'll be maybe a few wheat berries that didn't get ground up on the first go. So I like to fluff the flour. I will put the top of the hopper back on, and then I will mill again for maybe 30 more seconds just to ensure the flour is as fine as I would like it to be, and to get any leftover or straggling berries that did not get milled the first time around. I find that this flour mill works really well in small amounts. You will see today that I put approximately 4 cups of wheat berries into my hopper, and that was slightly too much. It worked out fine. I had a little bit of overflow, but if I mill about 3 to 3.5 cups of wheat berries each time, that's enough space within the hopper for everything to be ground up really, really well. So for dinner on this day, I was going to make chicken strip sandwiches. So I like to buy the whole chicken when I go to the grocery store each month, but my family doesn't like eating the chicken breast as is. So once I break down the chicken, I like to reserve the chicken breast for days like this, where I can either ground it and make meatballs or make goulash or make chicken patties, but I also like to cut it into strips and do an oven fry and make sandwiches. So on this day I needed some hamburger buns, and so I'm milling some flour that I will be putting into my bread machine, and I will be using that to make hamburger buns for dinner later on. So as you can see, I have ran the mill twice and I got a lot of flour. Like I said, I had a little bit of overspill, and that's going to be put towards my recipe to make my hamburger bread. Now, I will be linking in the description box the recipes that I'm using for this. There are some lovely creators out there who have done the groundwork, who have done the experiments, and who have come up with really great recipes that are now tried and true and easy to follow for beginners like myself. I find that I am very comfortable working with wheat berries now, but now that I'm using 100% wheat berries, I want to follow recipes that have been tested over time. And so I will link in the description box all of the recipes that I'm using and links to the creators so that they can get the credit for creating these recipes. None of these recipes are my own. Working with freshly milled flour is going to be a trial and error for many of us when we're first starting out. Freshly milled flour does not always give you the results as all-purpose flour from the store or any other flour variety from the store. These flours that we're getting from the store, they contain additives and they contain ingredients that make them ready to go. Freshly milled flour does not always have the same gluten content as you will find in the flour on the shelf, and they don't have those shelf stabilizers. So what I find that has helped me in my process, in my journey, is adding vital wheat gluten to anything that I'm making that will be using yeast. And so I'm making some yeast hamburger bread for dinner, and I'm using my bread machine for this. And so I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of vital wheat gluten into my bread machine along with all the other ingredients. That added gluten helps me to achieve the results I'm looking for. I've used freshly milled flour without the vital wheat gluten before, and it didn't get the same results. And since we're in this transitional period, I'm going to continue to use it. Again, let the family get used to the food the way it is, because it's different. It's going to be different than what you either buy straight from the store or when you're using store-bought flour. And so I don't want to turn my family off to food, and I don't want to end up throwing out a lot of food. And so I find that I'm getting results that everybody enjoys when I use the vital wheat gluten. Again, I only use it for recipes that call for yeast. If I'm making a sweetbread or a muffin or something that calls for a leavening agent like baking soda or baking powder, I do not use the vital wheat gluten. So one hard and fast rule that I found that has worked for me is using vital wheat gluten with hard wheat, anything that uses yeast. But if I'm using a soft wheat or anything that calls for baking powder or baking soda, then there's no need for that added gluten to that recipe. So I'm going to put all my ingredients into my bread machine, and I'm going to have my bread machine do the kneading, the mixing, and all that for my dough for my hamburger buns. That will take about an hour and a half, and so I'm going to let my bread machine do that. I will caution anyone who has never used a bread machine before that it's not always a set it and forget it kind of situation. I have done that before, and I've gone back at the end of the hour and a half cycle and nothing has been mixed, nothing is together. I will say what you should do in the first 5 minutes. Once you've put all your ingredients into your bread machine, kind of babysit it for 5 minutes. Stay there, make sure everything is being incorporated, make sure there's enough liquid inside so that you don't come back an hour and a half later ready to work with your dough and it is not what it is supposed to be. So take it from my experience. For the first 5 minutes or so of your bread machine cycle, you want to stand there, you want to pay attention to it, you want to help it along, make sure you're having an eye on it so that you will produce the result that you're looking for. Okay, so the next thing I'm working on today is some animal crackers, and I am milling some soft wheat to make these animal crackers. This is soft white wheat, and this is something that takes baking powder or baking soda, and so I will not be adding any vital wheat gluten to this recipe. Again, the recipe that I'm using I will link in the description box below for anyone who is interested. So while my flour mill is going, I wanted to talk to you briefly about some seemingly old-fashioned homemaking habits that I find really helps me as a modern homemaker. One of the first things I find that really helps me in my homemaking journey is as soon as I am able to in the morning, I make my bed. I find that making my bed first thing in the morning really sets the tone for the day. It is just one thing that is a mood booster. I look around and it's one thing that is just instantly lifts my mood. And so I find that making my bed every day, it's a great way to get started with everyday homemaking tasks. When the bed is not made, I find like everything else around the house just looks a mess. So one simple thing, making your bed in the morning, is a wonderful way to boost your morale and to get you motivated to do something else throughout the day. Another habit that I find that really helps is to have a morning and evening rhythm for just daily cleaning. Guys, I'm not talking about scrubbing walls and baseboards and all of that. Guys, I'm talking about a simple rhythm, 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at the end of the day, to just walk through your home and give a quick tidy. You are fluffing pillows in the living room, picking up toys and putting them back on the shelf. Any books that might have been taken out, put them back where they belong. Declutter a space really quickly. Anything that can be done in about 15 minutes. In the bathroom, you wipe down the counters, give the toilet a quick wipe. Whatever you're doing, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. It's a wonderful practice. It keeps your house feeling tidy. It keeps your house feeling less chaotic. And it's just something that our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents did. And it's one thing that you can do, again, in the morning and at night to boost the morale in your house and to keep your space being tidy. Another obvious one probably for some people, but it's one that I really feel strongly about, is putting your kitchen to bed at night. And what do I mean by that? So many of us get really busy and we have really full schedules, and by the end of the night, we've all had dinner, we're super exhausted, and the last thing we want to do, right, is to do the dishes. I promise you, 15 more minutes after you've had a really hard day, take 15 more minutes, wash the dishes, whether it's by hand or load that dishwasher if that's what you have. Clean off your counters, clean off your appliances. If you cooked that night, now is the time, especially if the stove is still warm, to do a really good wipe up the stove. If you use the microwave, go into your microwave and do a quick wipe of the microwave. Any small appliance that you used to make dinner or throughout the day, now is a perfect time to do a quick clean. Sweep the floor. If you need to do a quick mop of the floor as well. And last but not least, take out any garbage that needs to be taken out of the kitchen. I promise you, if you put your kitchen to bed each night, or as often as you're able to, your future self will thank you. When I walk into my kitchen in the morning and it's clean, and all I have to do is put away the dry dishes, I am motivated to create. I am motivated to get started with the day. If the first thing I have to do in the morning is to clean my dishes, I don't want to do anything. I'm unmotivated. I'm dragging my feet because why am I starting with yesterday's issues? So I promise you, you will thank yourself. Do the dishes at night, and that includes clearing off your counters. That includes cleaning up your appliances. That includes sweeping, vacuuming your floors, and that includes taking out any garbage that needs to go outside. Part of putting your kitchen to bed also includes a little bit of meal planning. Now, for some, meal planning means sitting down and mapping out the week for each meal or for the month or for the day, whatever it is that you do. I find I don't have a dishwasher, so I find that at night, while I'm doing the dishes, one of the things I'm thinking about is, hey, what are we doing for dinner tomorrow? And so that helps to set me up for success the next day. Once I've put my kitchen to bed, in quotation marks, I then go to my freezer and I take out what I need for dinner the next day. So if I know I need to defrost chicken, if I need to defrost fish, whatever it is that we're having as my main protein source the next day, I am going to take that out of my refrigerator, put it in the bottom of my fridge, and that's going to start defrosting. And so when I get up the next day and I get into the kitchen, ding, 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 I already know what's for dinner. I've already started defrosting it, and I have a habit of working on the next meal while I'm working on the current meal. So if I'm making breakfast and I know I need bread for lunch and it takes me an hour and a half to make bread, well, I'm gonna get breakfast going and then I'm gonna pop some ingredients into my bread machine so that I can have my bread ready for lunch. If I'm working on lunch and I need something for dinner, usually I have to cut up my chicken and have it marinating. As soon as I'm done putting my lunch together and my children are eating, guess what I'm gonna do next? I am going to start cutting up my chicken because, hey, I started defrosting it from the night before. So by 1 o'clock, my chicken is defrosted and I can cut up and clean up my chicken, and then I can put it in the marinade and I can start working on dinner when I'm done having lunch with my children. So I try to stay one step ahead of myself, so that helps me when it comes to mealtime. I used to do a big elaborate meal prep. I have everything planned out, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it really was just a guide. And it was a way for me to see how I was using ingredients throughout the month. I don't do that anymore, but I always have a running list of meals in my head that I know my family enjoys. And because we keep sort of a boring grocery list, I repeat the same meals all the time. I try to do different things to jazz it up and to make it interesting, but I promise you, to stay on budget every month, I pretty much buy the same things every month. We don't do too many experimental food shops. Grocery prices are way too high to be experimenting with food right now. That's just my take. So I stick to the basics, I stick to what I know my family enjoys, and we rotate meals. So that's one way that I keep my costs down each month for groceries. And again, that's another way that I stay one step ahead of myself because I know what meals my family enjoys and I know what I can do to put a tasty meal on the table every night. So, part of putting your kitchen to bed each night should include just a quick plan for the meals for the next day so that you can stay one step ahead of yourself. If you need to defrost meat, you can take it out. For me, I like to cook with dry beans, and so I can soak my beans overnight and the next day it cooks much quicker. So again, I am helping my future self by just taking a few minutes to think ahead as to what will happen the next day. So you saw me working on milling the flour for these animal crackers, and I put all the ingredients together in my bowl, and now I'm using my hands to pull it together. I will say my feelings about this recipe is 50-50. This was my first time working with this recipe, and I find that it was a little hard to work with, but I feel like I know what I need to do next time to make it a little bit more pliable. So I probably will need to up the hydration level in this recipe the next time around. But the cookies came out great. They worked really well with my cookie cutters that I used. And in addition to that, they had great flavor and taste. Next time I do this, I'm going to up the amount of cinnamon and vanilla I add to this and up the hydration because it was slightly dry. So this is a work in progress, but for the first attempt, it was really good. So my last tip that may or may not be considered old-fashioned is choosing real, whole, better for you foods whenever you go to the grocery store. Well, I live in a location where I don't have a backyard garden. I have access to the farmers market, but I feel like it's kind of out of my way to get to them. And so I have to rely on whatever I can find in my grocery stores. I try to choose whole, better for you ingredients every time I'm cooking, but I'm not opposed to using ready, convenient foods either. I always tell anyone who will listen to do the best you can with what you have. There is no need for us to have this competition with each other. All we're striving to do is to feed our families, and I believe we're doing it the best way we know how. My simple tip is whenever possible, choose whole, better for you, real ingredients in your meals. If possible, try to avoid the ultra processed and the convenience foods. With a little bit of planning, you can make whole, real foods convenient for you. And if you're interested in watching me make whole ingredients convenient, please let me know in the comment section below. What do you mean by making foods convenient? I can have that be a whole separate episode, and I can talk about that at length, because I understand, even though I am home primarily, I understand that it gets busy, and especially if you're working outside of the home, you might not have the time to create these elaborate meals every night of the week. And please trust me, I am not creating elaborate meals every night of the week either. I am the queen of batch cooking. I will cook today for 2 or 3 days, and I won't cook again until all that food is gone, because I don't want to be in the kitchen cooking every day either. And so I understand having real meals available that are convenient. I completely understand that. So trust and understand that I'm not saying that we need to be in the kitchen all hours of the day creating these huge elaborate meals. That's not necessary. But we can still feed our families with wonderful, nutritious ingredients, and we can do it on a budget. Like I shared before, in this video, I would like to share with you some snacks that we rely on throughout the week. Now, you saw me getting the dough ready for making animal crackers. You also saw me making Kamut puff Krispies. These are very similar to Rice Krispie treats. In fact, they're probably the exact same thing. I just swapped out the Kamut puffs. And I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that these treats are the most nutritious things. No, I'm just showing you some quick snacks I like to keep on hand for those moments when we need something quickly to eat. Besides the animal crackers, besides the Kamut Krispies, I'm also cutting up some vegetables. Now, my children are 13, 9, and 7, and they're pretty versed in the kitchen. My 7-year-old is able to get up in the mornings and scramble some eggs for herself, and they're able to use the knife with efficiency. But I like to do a few things to just help them along throughout the day. So whenever I have time, I will make sure that there is already cut up cheese, because we buy cheese by the block, and there's always shredded cheese. They will sometimes just eat the slices of cheese as is, They also use the shredded cheese to make pizzadillas, and pizzadillas is what we call them, but it really is just two tortillas with pizza toppings inside, smushed together and made in the oven. When I cut up the vegetables, especially when I cut up carrots, I like to leave it in a glass of water in the refrigerator so it doesn't dry out over time. And I have to restock this probably every 2 days, 2 or 3 days before this is all gone. So fresh fruit and vegetables is a very much go-to staple for us in our kitchen. By this point in the month though, we usually have run out of our fresh fruit, and so we rely now on frozen fruit in the form of smoothies to get those vitamins and nutrients. So here you see me cutting up some watermelon. I will also have the vegetables cut up and available as a snack for the children as well. And so on this day, when we were having chicken sandwiches for dinner, I also had these watermelons as part of our dinner option. We didn't do French fries on this day, and so our crunchy element was the watermelon. When I do grocery shopping for the month, I try to buy groceries that will last the month. So there's always the concern of the perishables going bad, and so I try to buy things that will last a while. I try to stay away from the fresh berries or anything that bruises easily. Now, I will buy fresh berries if my intention is to use it within the day or two of purchasing them. I will rather buy berries frozen because it lasts me the whole month and I don't have to feel pressure to use them up quickly. And so when I buy fruits, I will buy things like bananas, I will buy apples, I will buy oranges, tangerines or mandarins or clementines, pineapple, watermelon. Those are the fruits that I tend to buy because they have a longer shelf life and they store well in the refrigerator. Now, the watermelon is not in my refrigerator, but the smaller items I will store in my refrigerator. I usually buy apples because I can turn them into applesauce. I usually buy banana because I can turn them into some kind of baked product like banana bread. I like to buy things that I can use in multiple ways. The same is true for the vegetables. When I do buy vegetables, I buy things that have a longer shelf life. Potatoes, they will last several weeks if stored properly. Onions, garlic, they will last a long time if stored properly. Okay, so my bread machine has gone off and it's now time to shape my rolls for dinner. Again, we're having sandwiches for dinner and I needed to make some hamburger buns, and it's very simple. Once the dough is finished and has come out of my bread machine, I'm going to break this up in, I think the recipe calls for 10 to 12 buns, but I just did whatever I could with what I had here. And I'm just going to cut them up as best I can. If you want more uniformity, you can use a kitchen scale. For me, it wasn't necessary to pull out my scale to weigh these, so I just kind of eyed it as best I could. So I think for this, I got maybe 11 buns by the end of it, and that worked out fine for our family. The next thing I'll be working on now will be the animal crackers. So after you put all the ingredients together and the dough forms, you're supposed to have it sit either at room temperature or in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes. So everything is just coming together nicely on this day. Like I said before, I feel like this dough needed a little bit more hydration. It was hard to roll out, and I will have to adjust that the next time I make these. But the flavor was there, my children loved it, and I think it probably only lasted a few days before they were all gone. I especially loved using these cookie cutters. They didn't just cut out the shape, they allowed you to press into the dough to make the imprint like the animal, and I just thought that was so adorable. So here is a look at one of the finished trays of animal crackers that I got. Guys, I didn't even count. I don't even know how many we got, but I ended up with 2 trays of animal crackers. And again, they were tasty, and I will definitely be making this again. So here you have it, guys, the finished spread for the night. I let the animal crackers cool, and then I put them in a half-gallon mason jar. And here are the Kamut Puff Krispies. I cut them up and I just divided them into individual portions. So those will be there for snack for the week. You saw me also cutting up some vegetables, and those will be stored in the refrigerator for my children to just grab and go when they would like. Here is what we had for dinner today. You saw me with the hamburger buns. I had some lettuce and tomato. I also had the chicken strips that were oven fried. So we had a celebration this weekend, and my husband and I were celebrating 17 years of marriage. And as one of the options for dinner that day, we also had a piece of ham. So we had a little bit of ham left over, and so that was part of the spread for today's meal. So the children, everyone had option to have a chicken sandwich for dinner or ham or both. And so this is what my finished plate looked like. I actually had one of each. I had a ham sandwich and I had a chicken sandwich, and I got some of the watermelon for my crunchy factor on the plate. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your support of my channel. I really appreciate you liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you're getting anything of value from this channel, I really appreciate it and I would love to hear from you. Please feel welcome, and please feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions about anything that you've seen in any one of my videos. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will catch you in the next one.